The call came in at 2:47 on a Tuesday afternoon. I was going over acquisition reports for my latest development when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. "Hello, this is Victoria Manning from Elegant Events Planning." A voice purred on the other end, syrupy with rehearsed charm. "I'm reaching out about the Henderson wedding this Saturday." Henderson. My maiden name. The one I'd walked away from 3 years earlier after years of belittlement and control. "Yes," I replied evenly, placing my pen aside. "Well, unfortunately." Victoria's voice shifted, becoming sharper, almost dismissive. "You've been removed from the guest list. The family's decision. I'm sorry, but you're no longer invited." I leaned back in my leather chair, gazing past the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office on the 47th floor. Outside, crews were busy raising Anderson Plaza, another jewel in my real estate crown, one my family knew nothing about. "I see," I answered calmly. "Oh good." She exhaled with obvious relief. "I was warned you might cause a scene. I'm glad this is easier than expected. Anyway, have a nice day." The line clicked dead. I stared at my phone, then broke into an unexpected, genuine laugh that rang through the empty office. They'd actually done it. My own sister had struck me from her wedding guest list. The wedding, of course, was being held at Grandview Manor, the most sought-after wedding venue in the city. The very same property I'd quietly purchased 6 months earlier through Morrison Properties, LLC. A knock at the door. My assistant David stepped in. "Ms. Anderson, your 3 o'clock is here." "Cancel it," I said, still smiling. "And bring me the Grandview Manor file." 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. Same number. "Hello, Ms. Anderson." This time Victoria's tone was frantic, high-pitched. "I am so terribly sorry about earlier. I had no idea. None of us realized you own the venue. Please, tell me we can resolve this. The wedding is tomorrow." I let the silence drag, listening to her shaky breathing. "Victoria," I said at last. "We need to talk." "Yes, absolutely. I can come to you. Or you can come here. Whatever you prefer. You're the owner, after all. I am mortified this happened. I'll be there in an hour." Grandview Manor sprawled across 12 immaculate acres in Highland Park, just half an hour from downtown Chicago. The first time I saw it, I'd been captivated. A restored 1920s estate with sculpted gardens, a ballroom for 300, and intimate side rooms perfect for smaller ceremonies. Chicago's elite booked it years in advance, happily paying $50,000 to $200,000 per event. For me, it was a shrewd investment, nothing more. What I hadn't counted on was my sister Emma choosing it for her big day with Bradley Ashworth, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune and, in my mother's eyes, finally a man worthy of the Henderson name. Victoria was already waiting in the lobby, twisting her hands nervously. She looked younger than I expected, maybe late 20s, with flawless blonde waves and a tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Ms. Anderson," she rushed forward. "I cannot apologize enough. Truly. I had no idea you own this place. Your sister only told me you weren't welcome and asked me to handle it." "And what exactly did Emma say about me?" I asked as we walked toward the office. Victoria hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "She said you were the family disappointment. That you abandoned the family business for some failed startup. She insisted your presence would be humiliating." I nearly laughed again. A failed startup. If only they knew. 3 years ago, I'd been grinding away at Henderson Financial Group, my father's firm. I was the polished daughter, logging 60-hour weeks, generating millions, and still treated like a glorified intern by my father and my brother Marcus. My ideas dismissed, my wins credited to others, and every mistake pinned squarely on me. The breaking point? Discovering Marcus had claimed credit for my work on a municipal bond deal worth $12 million in fees. When I confronted my father, he told me to stop being emotional and start learning from Marcus instead of competing with him. So I walked away. I took my savings, my network, and my vision, and disappeared. They had no idea I'd been quietly building something far greater than they could comprehend. "Victoria," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Tell me about tomorrow's wedding." She slid a thick folder across. "It's going to be spectacular. 250 guests. Ceremony in the Rose Garden at 4. Cocktails on the terrace. Reception in the ballroom. The Ashworths spared no expense. It's about a $180,000 event. And Emma specifically said I wasn't welcome? Victoria nodded. She was adamant. I wrote it down. Under no circumstances is my sister allowed at this wedding. She's humiliated our family enough. I won't let her ruin the biggest day of my life. Something cold settled in my chest. Not anger, clarity. Victoria, I need you to call Emma. Tell her there's a problem with the venue. Her eyes widened. A problem? But everything's perfect. The flowers arrive in the morning. The caterers are locked in. The band has already done their sound check. Tell her it's been double booked. We need to discuss alternatives. Color drained from her face. But that isn't true. And even if it were, you couldn't possibly find another venue of this scale with less than 24 hours. Not for a wedding this size. I know, I said simply. It took her a moment to grasp what I meant. When she did, her eyes went wide. Ms. Anderson, you can't be serious. Make the call. 15 minutes later, my phone rang. What do you mean the venue is double booked? Emma shrieked. Her voice was so sharp I had to pull the phone from my ear. Emma, I said evenly. Don't you dare me. This is catastrophic. Do you have any idea how much we've spent? The flowers alone cost $15,000. And now you're telling me some clueless wedding planner botched the reservation? Actually, there wasn't any mistake at all. Silence. What do you mean? I mean Victoria called you because I asked her to. Emma, I own Grandview Manor. I've owned it for the past 6 months. More silence. That's impossible. You don't have that kind of money. You're barely keeping your little computer company afloat. If she only knew. Emma, listen carefully. You have 2 options. You can apologize for kicking me out of your wedding, your own sister, and we pretend this entire conversation never happened. Or you can scramble to find a new venue by tomorrow. You're bluffing. This is some twisted prank. You probably called, pretending to be the owner just to screw with me. Check the property records, Emma. Morrison Properties LLC bought Grandview Manor in April. That's my company. I could hear her breathing, sharp and uneven. Even if that's true, which I don't believe, you wouldn't actually ruin my wedding. You're not that heartless. You're right. I'm not cruel. I'm simply unwilling to host events for people who think I'm the family disgrace. This is insane. I'm calling Dad. He'll fix this. By all means. The line went dead. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was my father. Sophia, what the hell is happening? Emma's hysterical, saying you own some wedding venue, and you're trying to sabotage her wedding. Hi, Dad. How've you been? Almost 2 years since we last spoke, isn't it? Don't play games. Emma claims you're threatening to cancel her wedding. I'm not threatening anything. I simply told her that as the owner of Grandview Manor, I decide which events I allow. Silence. So you own Grandview Manor? Along with other properties? Yes. How? You left Henderson Financial with practically nothing. 50 grand in savings maybe. I had more than savings. I had 3 years of contacts from my time at your firm. I knew Chicago's real estate market inside and out, thanks to all those municipal bond projects I worked on. The ones Marcus took credit for. And I had something you never noticed. I had talent. This is absurd. Even if you somehow managed one property, Grandview Manor alone is worth $8 million. You couldn't possibly afford it. Dad, do you remember the Millennium Development Project? The $200 million financing deal for the Cultural District? Of course. That was Marcus's deal. One of his biggest wins. No, Dad. That was my deal. I spent 8 months building the relationship with the city planners, structuring the financing, negotiating terms with contractors. Marcus just signed off and smiled for the newsletter photo. That's not. And the Patterson Industrial Acquisition? The one that netted Henderson Financial $15 million in fees? Mine too. I identified Patterson as a target, built the financial models, pitched it to their board. Marcus presented my work and took the promotion. I could hear his breath catch. For 3 years, I built your business while you and Marcus told me I wasn't smart enough, wasn't tough enough, wasn't a real Henderson. So I walked away and started over. The difference? This time I kept the credit for my own work. Even so, owning one property doesn't make you a mogul. I opened the folder David had prepared earlier. Morrison Properties now owns 17 commercial properties across Chicago, worth around $180 million combined. We hold majority stakes in 3 upcoming developments, and we're negotiating to purchase the Henderson Financial Group building. The silence dragged so long I thought he'd hung up. You're trying to buy our building? I already made the offer. Your landlord seemed very interested. Something about Henderson Financial being 3 months behind on rent. Another silence. What do you want, Sophia? I want to be treated with the same respect you give strangers. I want Emma to apologize for uninviting me. And I want all of you to stop acting like I'm a failure just because I chose to succeed outside your little empire. And if Emma apologizes, then she gets her dream wedding at one of the most exclusive venues in Chicago, and we move forward as a family. And if she doesn't? I glanced out the office window at the gardeners finishing the rose garden. Emma's intended ceremony site for tomorrow. Then she spends the next 18 hours finding a replacement venue. This is blackmail. No, Dad. This is business. Something I learned from you. He hung up without another word. An hour later, Emma called again. Her voice was softer now, stripped of hysteria. Sophia. Yes. Mom says I should apologize. What do you think? A long pause. I think I don't understand how you went from being our family's disappointment to owning half of Chicago without us knowing. I went from being your scapegoat to being successful. That's the difference. We really hurt you, didn't we? It was the first time anyone in my family admitted how unfairly they'd treated me. Something inside me loosened. 3 years of resentment unwinding. Yeah, Emma. You did. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for uninviting you. For calling your business a failure, for all of it. I don't know how to fix this, but I want you at my wedding. Will you still come? I considered making her beg. I could have demanded apologies from the whole family, forced them to acknowledge every slight, every time they made me feel small. But Emma was still my sister. And beneath the entitlement and cruelty, I heard something I hadn't heard in years, real remorse. I'll be there, I said at last. Really? Really? But Emma? Yeah. This conversation never happened. As far as anyone knows. Tomorrow I'm just another guest who happens to admire fine venues. I understand. And Sophia. Thank you. The next day, I arrived at Grandview Manor at 3:30 p.m. Half an hour before the ceremony, I slipped into the outfit I'd chosen with care. A navy dress that was elegant but understated, paired with simple jewelry. My goal wasn't to stand out, but to blend into the background. Yet as I stepped through the main doors, a quiet wave of pride washed over me. The venue I had restored and transformed now stood as Chicago's premier wedding destination. Emma was radiant in her gown, a custom piece that likely costs more than most people's cars. The moment she spotted me, she broke away from her bridesmaids and hurried over. Sophia, you came. Of course. You look incredible, Emma. Thank you. And thank you for everything. This place is perfect. I'm glad you're happy with it. She paused, then leaned closer. Can I ask you something? Are you really as successful as you told Dad yesterday? I smiled. Even more so. But today isn't about me. It's about you and Bradley. The ceremony unfolded beautifully. Emma and Bradley exchanged vows in the rose garden beneath a flawless September sky. Surrounded by family and friends who had no idea the owner of the venue sat quietly in the third row, watching her sister marry into one of Chicago's most notable families. During cocktails, I found myself deep in conversation with guests, many of whom turned out to be potential clients for my projects. By dinner, I already had 3 new business cards and 2 meeting requests for the week ahead. Later, my father approached, looking stiff in his tuxedo. Sophia. Dad. Can we talk? We stepped onto the terrace, away from the noise. I owe you an apology, he said without hesitation. For what exactly? He flinched at my bluntness. For underestimating you. For letting Marcus claim credit for your work. For making you feel like you had to choose between family and success. I studied his face. He looked older, wearier than I remembered. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. Did you know Marcus was taking credit for my deals? Silence stretched between us before he admitted. I suspected. But you didn't stop it. I told myself it would toughen you up, teach you to fight for recognition. No. What you believed was that Marcus deserved the credit because he was your son, the heir, while I was just the daughter who would eventually marry and leave. He didn't deny it. I'm proud of what you've built, Sophia, he said quietly. I wish we'd built it together. Through the window, I saw Emma dancing with her new husband, surrounded by laughter and joy. The kind of life I once thought I wanted. Their approval, a place in their world, validation. Dad, I want to show you something. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. His eyes widened as he scrolled through Morrison Properties balances. Jesus Christ, Sophia. You're worth more than Henderson Financial. More than the Ashworths. More than anyone in this room. How? The same way you did it, Dad. One deal at a time. Except I did it alone, without anyone stealing my credit. We stood in silence, listening to the music drifting from the ballroom. What happens now? He finally asked. Now, Emma has her perfect wedding. And maybe, if you're open to it, we can discuss Henderson Financial partnering with Morrison Properties on future projects. You'd really work with us? After everything. I'd work with you, Dad, but as equals. Not as your daughter seeking approval. As the CEO of a company that could make a valuable partner. He nodded slowly. I think I'd like that. Good. Have your team call mine on Monday. He let out a surprised, genuine laugh. When did you get so ruthless? I learned from the best. As the night wound down and guests began to leave, I hugged Emma goodbye. Thank you, she whispered. For everything, for this venue, for being here, for not letting me ruin it all. You didn't ruin anything, Emma. You just learned something about assumptions. Like what? That you never really know someone's capacity until you give them the chance to prove it. On the drive back to my penthouse, I replayed the past 24 hours. For 3 years, my family had assumed I was a failure. Someone who wasted her potential and tarnished the Henderson name. But I hadn't wasted anything. I had invested every ounce of talent, knowledge, connection, and yes, even my anger, into creating something far greater than they imagined. The wedding was only the beginning. Monday would bring meetings with 3 major developers, a city planning session for the new cultural district, and a call with investors about Morrison Properties' upcoming IPO. But tonight, I was simply Sophia Anderson, the woman who owned Chicago's most beautiful wedding venue, and who had finally received the apology she deserved from a family that never believed in her. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it turns into something better. Reconciliation rooted in respect, love shaped by understanding, and a family that finally sees you for who you are, not who they assumed you'd be. As I drifted to sleep, I thought back to Victoria's frantic call earlier. She had no idea her mistake had given me something unexpected. The chance to prove to my family that the daughter they dismissed was now the woman who could shape their most important moments with a single call. Tomorrow, everything would be different. Sophia Henderson, the family disappointment, was gone. In her place stood Sophia Anderson, CEO of Morrison Properties, the woman who turned rejection into the drive to build an empire they never saw coming. And honestly, that felt better than any wedding ever could.